Hello, I hope you can hear us well. We are streaming live now. This is Aloha Aini, now living conversations. This is the 134th conversation, and we have a conversation today, a theme, a subject that we were supposed to talk about last week or the week before that, and we postponed it because I was in a trip in Bolivia and the internet was very bad. But now I'm back in Mexico, and I'm with Sacred Blue Heron Woman, who is in Indianola, Oklahoma. And today's subject, and I know a lot of folks are kind of intrigued or curious or um, sparked about this, is the Tao of Love and Sex. Because I saw some friends join the event, so it's like this subject is interesting for them.
Yeah.
So I expect to see them coming. So hopefully they're here or they'll be coming here. And here we go. Here we are into the Tao of Love and Sex.
I should rephrase that and say the Tao of natural love and sex, because we're going to start a journey here into really digging into the difference between natural and normal. Normal
Okay.
is what we've been domesticated into. Natural is what is our evolutionary process.
Right, right. That's kind of the theme along all of our conversations, the fact that
Yeah.
we are
Yeah.
domesticated, and this subject, that sexuality and love, has to be referred to, has to be talked about, and not
Well, it does, and
left.
we have to make such a big distinction between natural versus normal.
Mhm.
With everything, with everything. So, well, let's start again. We started this a couple weeks ago. So, the immediate cause of many devastating diseases can be traced to the fact that man is the sole species which does not fulfill the natural organic law of sexuality.
Okay.
People
Are you
who
gonna
are,
explain that?
it pretty much explains it itself.
Okay.
Natural sexuality, right?
So that means we don't have that. We
No, we'll get into. It's called junk sex,
okay. Okay. Okay.
junk sex, or sex for reproduction only. Yeah,
Mhm.
no, there's nothing natural about our sexuality. It's all contrived, pretty much,
Mhm.
and all about the orgasm instead of a whole body experience. And but we'll get we're getting way ahead of ourselves here. So
Okay.
people who are brought up with a negative attitude toward life and sex acquire a pleasure anxiety, which is physiologically anchored in chronic muscular spasms.
Mhm.
Sexuality and anxiety are functions of our living organism operating in opposite directions: pleasurable expansion and anxious contraction.
Okay.
Now, what's interesting about this is the man I was with for so long, who's such a staunch Southern Baptist. I told him, if your religious beliefs weren't so rigid, you wouldn't be in so much pain. And he just laughed at me. And it's true. What he's brought up with a negative attitude toward life, being a sinner, and sex has to be condoned by the pastor. So he's got a pleasure anxiety anchored in chronic muscular spasms, low back pain.
Okay.
It is the core fear, pleasurable expansion is the core fear of an independent and interdependent, communal, genuinely free way of life. We don't want to have this pleasurable expansion because we're zoo animals, we're zoo humans.
Yeah.
Psychic illnesses are the consequences of the sexual chaos of our society. And for thousands of years, this chaos has had the function of psychically subjecting humans to the prevailing conditions of existence, which are internalizing the external mechanization of life. This has served to bring out the psychic anchoring of our patriarchal, psychotic way of life, which is mechanized, monetized, militant, or authoritarian civilization, and it makes us incapable of functioning without it. So the domestic character structure of all of us who continue to reproduce the 6,000-year-old MMM culture is typified by characterological armoring against our inner wild, true spiritual sensual natures, and also then against the social misery which surrounds us, which goes back to the statement of, what, you think I should be, you want me to feel bad that I'm hoarding silver and the people in Bolivia were stupid enough to let it go? Right? Social misery. Armored against it. This armoring is the basis of our isolated, fear of responsibility, sexual misery, neurotically impotent, rebellious, pathologically tolerant, authority craving, and mystic craving way of life. The structuring of masses of people to be blindly obedient to authority is brought about by the authoritarian family, not natural parental love. So since the emergence of the patriarchy, the natural pleasure of work and activity has been replaced by compulsive duty, the need to have a job, the need to make a living, the need to have social health insurance, the need to have dental insurance, the need for this, the need for that, right? The authoritarian dictatorial regime of every kind seeks through compulsive morality and compulsive work to destroy the spontaneous decency and natural self-regulation of our vital energies. So the social organization of humanity has the natural function of both protecting work and the natural fulfillment of love. Knowledge, work, and natural love are the sources of our lives. They should also govern our lives, and full responsibility should be borne by working men and women everywhere. So, social power exercised by the people, through the people, and for the people, born by the natural feeling for life and respect for performance of work would be invincible. And that is everything we're doing with Aloha Aini Dao Living. Social power with our Sustainable Life Dojo's Aloha Aini Dao Living. Crafting a new form of governance that is social power exercised by the people, through the people, and for the people, with a natural feeling for life and respect for crafting the things we need. The unity and congruity of culture, nature, work, and love, morality, and sexuality, longed for from time immemorial, will remain a dream as long as we continue to condemn the biological demand for natural sexual fulfillment. Genuine democracy and freedom founded on consciousness and responsibility are also doomed to remain an illusion until this demand is fulfilled. Natural sexual fulfillment. And most everyone would say, the hell are you talking about? I'm sexually fulfilled. That would be a man. And so I will say, have you asked your wife? Is she sexually fulfilled? Ask her. Ask her how many of the orgasms you think you gave her are 100% faked. I can tell you all of mine have been, all of them, to get it over with. Finally, enough of penis and vagina, enough. And we'll get further into that. So genuine democracy and freedom are not a condition which can be given, granted, or guaranteed by a group of people, an elected totalitarian government. It's a lengthy process. Genuine democracy and freedom is a lengthy process in which we have every possibility of schooling ourselves in the administration of vital individual and social life to advance into ever better forms of living. Genuine democracy and freedom are not a finished development, which some, like old man, enjoys its glorious militant past. It's rather a process of developing new ideas, new discoveries, new ways and forms of living. It's a process of determining our social behavior on the basis of inner spiritual guidance instead of external compulsive codes. The inner guidance is the yardstick of genuine freedom and democracy. Tradition is important when it fulfills the natural function of providing the new generation with the knowledge of the good and bad experiences of the past. And then the new generation can say, well, this we will take over from you because it is strong, honest, and still relative to our times and capable of development. But that other stuff, nah. It was useful for your time, but it's no longer useful. But this requires the progressive self-education of us toward responsible freedom instead of childish expectations that freedom can be received as a gift or guaranteed by someone else. So natural moral behavior presupposes that natural life process can be developed freely on its own. There can be no solution to any of the world's problems without a wholesome approach to love and sex. Natural approach. Nearly all destruction or self-destruction, all hatred and sorrow, almost all greed and possessiveness spring from a starvation of natural love and sex. So in our MMM society, the perspective of sexuality, which is normal, has been focused on procreational and recreational sex, and very little is known about the restorative and transformative aspects of sex.
Mm-hmm.
And really, sex has truly been reduced to its most primitive form, a simple act of reproduction, characterized first and foremost by speed. The act of sex can deteriorate into a very selfish act with more emphasis on physical appearance and self-gratification than the unconditional giving of passion to someone else. So the truth is that what we call sex today is nothing more than a woman allowing a man to use her body for him to reach orgasm. That's why I said, men, ask your wives how many of her orgasms are actually real.
Mm-hmm.
Or for him to ejaculate, as there is a difference between orgasm and ejaculation. Calling ejaculation the climax of pleasure is really a habit, and it's really truly a harmful habit. This is junk sex. And there are two main factors that have turned our sex, natural sex, into junk sex, and it's been this way for thousands of years since the patriarchy took over. One is the immature desire of men who haven't become fully formed adults to penetrate their partner as soon as possible and reach orgasm as soon as possible. And that was his desire. He did not want anything to do with slow dancing, to build up anything, wanted to get here, wanted his penis inside me as fast as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And two, in our modern society, she has less free time or she doesn't want to get pregnant. So her desire, so that means a condom or some sort of birth control, right? So her desire to get it over with quickly and his desire to reach orgasm quickly has accelerated the transformation of natural sex into junk sex. And it's not been natural for a very long time because it's been so degraded.
Mm-hmm.
And in the 70s, it came, free love. But so junk sex reduces what should be an act that is pleasurable and deepens love and makes people feel happy to be alive into something that is greedy, selfish, and guided by raw egotism. Sex is one of the greatest pleasures known to humankind. It's the reason we're born and the reason we die. We're sexual, spiritual creatures. And those who can understand and live in harmony with these two natures as one ideal are those who experience the most joy and contentment in life, because the more one gives, the more one receives. The goals of intense passion and complete focus on the sexual act can provide a portal for entering sexual and spiritual states far more joyful, profound, and beneficial than just the common sexual act performed either for recreational or procreational purposes. Most people assume that because they have sex, they know it, and that is one of the biggest problems with any sexual relationship. Nobody is born knowing how to have great sex. Sex is something that's got to be nurtured from both sides. And the truth of it is that very few of us know how to have slow sex, sex that is more sensual, more intimate, more open, and connected with pleasure focus for both. So as we come to understand that natural sexuality in its totality is a wonderful gift of life meant to develop us as better human beings, or to see the God and Goddess in every human, we'll find better ways of living. We'll be a different society. When we see sexuality this way, we can begin to finally respect and honor others, not as objects of lust and possession, but rather as vessels of pure naturalness and free spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he kept telling me. This is just lust. This is just lust. And for years, I heard my dad pray to God to take his carnal nature away, which would be that lust. Right? When we can regain the joyful feeling of being alive by experiencing the very real happiness of pleasure with our minds and bodies, it's a whole different world. And we can really then start to learn about the nature of natural love and expression through natural sexual intimacy. So there's an almost universal belief that when a woman is actively seeking and initiating sexual encounters, she is less than virtuous. She's a whore. It is time to change this perception as we women start taking responsibility for our natural sexual sensual nature. Jealousy, possessiveness, sexual depravity, disease, and child abuse were non-existent in the world before the MMM war machine arrived. It
What
is
would that be?
curious.
MMM.
Huh?
What's MMM?
Mechanized, militant, monetized.
Okay, cool. Okay.
It is curious. Only in cultures that preach absolute morality there's so much evidence of immorality and the ill effects of sexuality. No man can truthfully say he loves a woman when his love is tarnished by the dictates of jealousy and possessiveness, and the same is true of a woman. There is a profound freedom in giving freedom, but the vast majority of relationships today are based primarily on greed. A greed for an individual perception of happiness, and marriage has become an exercise in material accumulation, status, and conformity. Women, by nature, are bonding and prone to desires of exclusivity, but even so, heterosexual women seek the attention of other males. So men should understand that females by nature are constantly engaging in the biological process of attracting the attention of males. And men by nature are very sexually possessive, but not biologically prone to exclusivity. Biologically, men are designed to procreate. So we women need to understand that males by nature are constantly engaged in the biological pursuit of sowing their seed, of fertilizing the species, right? So there are 5 aphorisms that sum up the Taoist view on sex. Number 1, it's the reason we are born, and if it's not utilized properly, it becomes a reason for illness, premature aging, and early death. One intense clandestine affair with a stranger is far more beneficial to our physical and mental health than 100 dalliances with one's own mate. Sex is the giver of life and the portal of beauty and youthfulness. And with sexual intercourse, we create the material child, and with oral sex, we can create the spiritual child. That one I'm still wrapping my head around that one. But longevity is not as much about the number of years you live, but how long you feel youthful. And the Taoists were like the goddess worshippers. Sex was right, because that's how the white tigress has achieved, and white tigers achieve immortality. And immortality doesn't mean staying alive forever. It means living to 120 and looking like you're only 40. And then being able to direct your energy where to go when you leave your body, or you just change form and become one of those ascendant masters. But So they said there are 12 health benefits of sex. It's nature's natural beauty treatment. Scientific tests have found that when women are sexually stimulated, their bodies produce increased amounts of estrogen, which makes our hair shine, softens, smooths our skin, firms our breasts, slims the waist, and heightens our sensory activities. It also, the slow sex, pleasurable sex, also, it would make menopause almost obsolete. It would make all the fertility problems we experience go away. Yeah. The act of passionate sex, number 2, reduces a female's chance of suffering dermatitis, skin rashes, and blemishes because the sweat and increased estrogen produces a cleansing of the skin pores and makes her skin glow. Passionate sex also encourages the release of gonadotropins from the pituitary gland, which regenerate all our cells and keep us looking younger. But we think we have hot, steamy sex. That's not passionate sex, because most of us regret that the next day, right? Sex burns a lot of calories. It's one of the safest exercise. It's an instant cure for mild depression, and the frequency of sex increases pheromones, so it creates more people wanting to have more sex. Sex is an effective and safe tranquilizer. It produces a sleep hormone in our bodies, and men experience it at about 6 times the level that women do. Oral sex and kissing are good for the teeth because of the increased saliva production. Sex can bring relief to headaches. It's a natural antihistamine and is very useful for unblocking a stuffy nose. Semen is very beneficial for women. And lastly, anal sex. Which was absolutely not natural in the time of the goddess worshippers. Anal sex done correctly can also be very good. There's actually a gland that resides about 2 inches into the anal tract on both men and women. And when stimulated correctly, it energizes the body. It also keeps the colon and anus working properly. These health benefits. Yeah, but it has to be all about, remember everything I read from the goddess book, the whole was about pleasure, offering pleasure offerings to Holy Mother, to Great All Mother Namu, right? So these health benefits do not come from the junk sex that we mostly all practice. And every human being is engaged in some form of sexual practice. Sexuality is forever present in our thoughts and actions. No one is exempt from sexuality, and it is absolutely the most powerful force in the makeup of human function and behavior. Few of us realize that the true secret for a happy, healthy relationship rests solely in bringing out our natural, passionate selves and learning how to be giving sexually and loving unconditionally. Simply to be touched, to want and feel needed is the basis from which all relationships must be nourished. Our physical bodies already contain marvelous healing and regenerative cells that are just waiting to rejuvenate and restore our bodies. And all it takes is simple stimulation, desire, and will. So, the Yellow Emperor of China, having just received instructions from the immortalist plain girl on how to restore his health and achieve immortality, humbly questioned her further on the origins of what she had been teaching him about sexuality. She told him that before the time of Fuji, who instituted the ritual of marriage between men and women, there was no such constraint to be the sole possession of one man. Everyone lived according to the Tao, and the Tao is female and is accessed through feminine power. Everything within heaven and earth are firstborn of emptiness, the yin of all phenomena. So prior to the time of Fuji, all men followed the workings of natural feminine power. And so everyone was living in accordance with the Tao, just as I have taught you to draw on feminine essence to achieve your own immortality. The mysterious girl, another immortaless, told him that before the time of Fuji, women did not need to cover themselves because men were neither jealous or possessive towards them, and they enjoyed living in the simplicity of the Tao, of the Tao. Women could express their Jing and Qi freely and openly, meaning they didn't wear tops. Their breasts were right there for everyone to see.
Mm-hmm.
However, the effects of forced bonding between men and women created rules of impropriety, set up acts of jealousy and possessiveness, and placed women in the role of being subordinate to the wishes and dictates of one man. So she became only a vessel of posterity, and her role as the portal to the Tao became clouded and hidden behind the walls man constructed for them. Came down to that simplicity. The forced marriage, that one man, one woman belonging to one man, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's three forces of sexuality. There's Jing, Qi, and Shen.
Okay.
And no one person was brought into this world without sexual forces and processes. So no one can escape these forces and the process of sexuality during their life.
Mm-hmm.
Likewise, no one came into this world without a spirit, so no one can escape the forces of their spirit. Sexuality and spirituality are the two primordial human forces, and the glue that ties them together is Qi, our vital energy and breath. Qi animates us, or Ki, or prana, mana from the Hawaiians, animates us and provides the energy for sexuality, which is the Jing, and spirituality, which is the Shen. Without Qi, the physical body dies immediately and the mind ceases to function. So we humans are comprised of two spirit-like energies, the Hun and the Po. The Hun is the heavenly spirit and the Po is the earthly spirit. Hun is responsible for our spirituality and Po for our sexuality. So at the moment of conception, we inherit the Qi that provides the energy for the process of forming and developing an embryo, which then also determines the strength of our sexuality, our Jing, our physical attributes and constitution, and our spirituality, our Shen, our mental attributes.
Mm-hmm.
So the process of you and me coming to life was an attraction and union of primordial energies. First, a man and a woman joined in sexual activity that emitted Qi, or energy. The unborn Hun spirits are attracted to this energy, and the Hun spirit, like one sperm cell, struggles to attach itself to the emitted Qi energy. And when the Hun spirit attaches itself to the energy of the parents, then a Po spirit, an earth spirit, is created. And the sperm reaches the female egg to fertilize it.
Mm-hmm.
So each of us are born as a result of sexual and spiritual energies. We exist from the union of them, and our continued existence depends on the maintenance of them. So the secrets of optimum healthy living and our continued existence depends on the maintenance of sexual and spiritual energies. And our sexual energies could also be said as what is hara in Japanese. It's right there in the pelvic basin.
Mm-hmm.
And even attaining immortality are so optimum healthy well-being, living long, and attaining immortality are found within the processes of restoring, accumulating, and refining these three essential life energies, the three treasures of Jing, Qi, and Shen. So what is Jing? It is the energy of our physical existence, the very primal urge we have to reproduce ourselves, the behavior we apply in expressing sexual desire, the substances contained within sexual fluids, the regenerative force. These are all Jing, or sexual energy, or organ energy per Wilhelm Reich. The orgasm is the human's most intense experience. Of all the forces within us, this sexual orgasmic energy is the strongest and is expressed in our daily life in countless ways, from the consumption of food to sexual activity. ever thought of eating food being orgasmic.
Mhm.
That's why we need to learn how to enjoy it so it does become more an orgasmic experience.
Yeah.
But there's nothing orgasmic about all the processed food we eat. So, sex, no matter whether we abstain from it or engage, is still the undercurrent of our physical condition and psychological temperament. And this energy is primarily expressed through the blood and sexual fluids. Chi is the breath and vital life energy, also the vital intelligence of Setai. It is this energy that animates us physically and activates our conscious mental functions. It is also the energy that attracts us to be sexual, and this energy is expressed through the orifices of the mouth, the
Mhm.
penis of the males, and the mouth and nipples of the female.
Mhm.
Shen has the simultaneous meanings of both mind and spirit, the energy of the Hun spirit and a person's spiritual existence. It represents the primordial energy that creates the consciousness of sexuality, and it is physically expressed through the eyes. So today it's the new in thing, right? To be spiritual. And most of us throw that term around without an understanding of what it really means. But it means to experience your full human potential, to become a true human being, a natural human being, someone who functions as the ideals of inspiration, imagination, awareness, compassion, benevolence, devotion, direction, courage, and wisdom. The spiritual ideal of becoming immortal and all the various internal experiences that result during this quest are predicated on the transformation of turning human greed and selfishness into integrity and aini, anger into compassion and benevolence, and fear into courage and wisdom, inner chaos into direction and devotion, and loss and grief into embodiment or sensation, actually feeling. So there are 5 areas of practice which we can reach our full human, spiritual, sexual potential. Number 1 is restoration. This is a physical work of restoring the 3 treasures. The practices of restoration are paramount, especially involving the strengthening of the jing, the sexual, physical energies, as these are what stimulate the qi and concentrate our spirit. So the Yellow Emperor asked the mysterious girl, why is it that women should expose their breasts with men of their choosing? Why is it that women must absorb the essences of the male on her body? She responded, the female body has 3 areas in which her jing and qi are most abundantly expressed: her jade gate, or her vagina, her 2 breasts, and her eyes. She also has 3 areas of her body where the jing and qi abundantly exude, and one is from under the tongue, right under the nipples, and right under the mysterious gate or clitoris.
Mhm.
Of these 3, the breasts and nipples are what initially stimulate the flow of jing and qi throughout her body most abundantly. So in her interactions with men, when breasts are exposed, the all-natural healing properties of her jing and qi will flow freely in her body. Women are already the embodiment of the power of Tao. They do not need to induce feminine essences within themselves, and our supply is inexhaustible. Men are not embodied by the power of the Tao, and therefore their essences can be depleted. However, like men, women need to complete the balance of yin and yang forces to achieve lasting youthfulness, optimum health, and immortality. Females are internal and men external. So men must feed their internal processes with yin forces, and women must feed their external processes with yang forces. This is the Tao of attaining youth within old age. It is the Tao of restoration and preservation of the human body. Tranquility, number 5, is, while it has many reasons, for now it first means to be at perfect ease with restoration and sexual practices. Non-interference. This is, in essence, letting people be just who they are and never attempting to change them and who you want them to be. Non-conformity means not to be swayed by the dictates of our domestication and the newest, latest thing in society. Conformity means non-freedom in practice and thought. It's being swayed by the opinions and views of others. In sexual practices, conformity is not to have sex that may create conditions of retribution and suffering for others. And number 5, active non-doing. Do what needs to be done without a mindset of contempt towards the task. Being as open to as many encounters as possible and a letting go, meaning to give oneself over to the practices of restoration and so dissolving the misguided sexual prejudices and morality. If we continue to live by the ideology that expressing sexuality is immoral, we'll be forever hindered from expressing our full human potential, spirituality, and immortality. So in restoration, frequent sexual stimulation is part of the practices. But some of the misguided sacred cows of sexuality then are, in men's minds, more friction equals more pleasure. And we're talking mainly about the women's clitoris here.
Mm-hmm.
The statement then is gently does it, remembering that the goal is not orgasm, but a deeper restorative pleasure for a longer period of time. Number 2 is penis worship. We believe that sex is inserting the penis into the vagina. Men, your hands are infinitely more dexterous than your penis and will lead your partner to much greater ecstasy than your penis will.
Mm-hmm.
Besides the vagina and clitoris, women's bodies abound in erogenous zones, each of which is unique in nature. The spectrum of pleasure provided by them is broad, ranging from strong and deep to gentle and faint. So the female body is a veritable orchestra of many instruments, and you men are the conductor with your hands, not your penis. Your hands, your mouth, your tongue, but mostly your hands. By understanding the nature of each instrument and bringing out its potential, you can perform a symphony of pleasure on your partner's body. So ideal restorative sex is when both partners stimulate and arouse each other equally, because while men's erogenous zones are mostly concentrated in his penis, you can experience far greater pleasure than you think. You can have as many erogenous zones on your body as a woman does.
Mm-hmm.
Ideal restorative sex is achieved through caressing and arousal, being a sexual glutton for each other's bodies. Through caressing each other gently, both men and women can become more receptive to pleasure. But we tend to think that our erogenous zones are doing the feeling, but it's not. It's the brain that's doing the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It's only after the object has been perceived by the brain, even with our eyes. Our eyes aren't doing the seeing, it's our brain that does the seeing, right? So only after the object has been perceived by the brain, seeing begins. So only after so if you reach a spot on her body where it's ticklish, that's a good sign. If she feels nothing, you just got to keep working. And if she starts feeling ticklish, that's a good sign. The pleasure will come after that, right? Sex is all in the mind, but because right, we have to get each other to equate. Oh, that feels really good. That's a sexual experience. Get the mind to perceive it as such. Right? So men really lose sight of this, and when you do, you have trouble giving your partner pleasure and bringing her to true natural orgasm. One of the reasons a surprising number of women and men can't experience pleasure in sex is that we confuse orgasm with pleasure. When our bodies are experiencing pleasure, it's like a glass gradually filling with water. Orgasm is when the glass is full and overflows. So filling up and overflowing are two different phenomena. Feeling pleasure means creating and storing up sexual energy, and orgasm is then the explosive release of that energy. Most of us are so used to having junk sex, that our sexual pleasure vessel is probably only about the size of a shot glass. Might be the size of a beer glass in a bar, right? But I'm going to say for the vast majority, it's the size of a shot glass. But there's literally no limit to how big our pleasure vessels can be. So then, when we've stored up all that sexual energy, the orgasm will be truly earth-moving. Now, here's the other thing is most men don't even really feel, while it's the most erogenous zone, they don't even really feel the pleasure in their penis. It has to be trained. It's coming from the...
Mhm.
So the sensation of sinking into an ocean of pleasure is the sensation of restorative sex. The beauty of a woman's body increases as it is loved, and that's the same with men. Great restorative, pleasurable sex is the best way for us to become even more beautiful. Ideal, restorative, pleasurable, natural sex is sex that satisfies both the men and the women, that forgets about the clock, focuses on each other's pleasure, entire body pleasure, not just nipples, clit, and vagina. With the mind in the free flow of time, we experience pleasurable sex that brings youthfulness, optimum health, and immortality. So let's talk about men some now. Men's genitals grow outward, right, from an early age. So you guys intuitively protect them. But over time, this instinctive desire to protect manifests itself as a permanent sense of inward armoring, a physical pulling in that extends to the entire pelvic area. So the male pelvis is frequently locked up tighter than a drum, and opening a man's pelvis is then part of the restorative process. Typically, because of the pelvic armoring, the male experience of sex is one that's controlled, circumscribed, and the living embodiment of uptight. And I can say that about the man I was with. Absolutely, the living embodiment of uptight.
Mhm.
To live in society, we all require a degree of control, but too much control, and we become automatons, robots. Control is always being right. Control is not letting the joy of life be present. Control is not letting your feelings influence your life or expressing your feelings. It's being neutral. It's not being sensual. It's lessening the enjoyment of sex. It's not being aware of or responsive to the feeling of others, since you're not even aware of your own. Control is always being on an even emotional plane, and to achieve such control is to not feel, to become numb. And this applies to the entire body, but is especially true in the anogenital region. Protection begins by pulling in the offending penis and the anus. The pelvis is ultimately a region that signals abandon and capitulation, an area of letting go and surrender to which men want to succumb but are shy. So it's been estimated that 1 to 3 inches of the penis is typically pulled into the perineum. So the tighter your pelvis, the smaller your dick, the smaller your
Okay.
penis.
The more uptight you are, the smaller your dick. That makes sense.
Yeah. Because your tight muscles are drawing it up into your body.
Wow.
So the human sexual response cycle consists of 4 distinct stages: excitement, plateau, orgasm, and resolution. But there is one that overpowers all the other: desire.
Mm-hmm.
Desire is the most mercurial and mysterious of all the phases. Desire is a launch pad for the process of sexual response, but desire is more than just the starting point. It's the middle, beginning, and end of sex, as well as all the little steps in between and the erotic glue between sexual encounters. Desire doesn't just give rise to sex, it's born of sex as well. So trust, familiarity, predictability, and romance are not the building blocks of desire. So how do we get this? So here's what I have to say. Here's why 99.9% of my orgasms were faked. Because A, he goes for my nipples, which are highly erotic. Very, oh man, I'm instantly turned on. Okay, that's the time to stop. She's turned on. Now I'll roughly brush her clit. And if I stop roughly brushing her clit, frictioning her clit, and maybe do it gently, and she's like, oh, she's turned on. Now I can move to her vagina. So the woman actually never reaches the true turned on phase because he stops it like a light switch every freaking time. And that has been my life, my sexual life. Is like the instant I'm like, oh my God, that feels good. Keep on. He stops. And that's right. I'm just coming into this. So maybe next week we'll continue with this and talk about how women, that's important. Yes. How women come into arousal and how men come into arousal, which is infinitely different. And this is what men have got to understand. This is where the mutual caressing and gets me stimulated. And it's not just about, again, it's not just about the nipples, the clitoris, and the vagina. I know from experience that my whole body is erogenous and it does feel good and it's relaxing and arousing. But again, as soon as he's kissing my neck and lightly and it feels like butterflies and it feels so good, he stops. And my pleasure switch is turned off. You do that too many times, then I'm going to figure out, well, yeah, the sex feels good. It's okay. I mean, because there's still somewhat of a pleasure. There's still somewhat of a pleasure build, right? But now I'm going to figure out what I got to do to make you come. So it's done. Because there's not going to be any fulfillment for me.
Okay. Lots to learn then. I don't know.
Yeah. So from Romeo and Juliet to Titanic's Leo and Kate, we are drawn to the romantic notion of love at first sight. But is love at first sight actually a way of seeing? Scientists have observed that when falling in love, there's a greater activity in the parts of the male brain associated with visual processing than there is in the female brain. So while men may be more visually oriented than women when it comes to sexual attraction, there's clear science to show that women have a keener sense of scent than men, and that olfactory stimulation plays a much stronger role in female arousal than in men. So a recent Swedish study concluded that men and women respond differently to two odors that play a role in sexual arousal. One is a testosterone derivative produced when men sweat, and an estrogen derivative found in women. So the estrogen-like compound lights up in the hypothalamus in men, and the testosterone does the same thing in women. However, Viagra continues to subordinate female sexuality to a phallocentric model, creating yet another reason for women to feel unsexy, inadequate, and guilty, rather than fed up, underserved with their penis pill-popping partners who leave them unsatisfied. So to recap, sex is a powerful, powerful, potent force. And we're engaged in junk sex that does nothing for our health. Most of it. We've got to slow it down and learn how to truly pleasure each other. And then the male pelvis is rife with internal conflict and struggle. A source of epic pleasure and anxiety is guarded by layers of protection that are both physical and psychological, conscious and unconscious. So as a result, many men are unaware of their extraordinary potential to engage in deeper and more responsive sexual interactions. Instead, they settle into a narrow set of sex scripts that calcify into mechanistic state behaviors. So to have truly great, restorative, pleasurable, natural sex, we need to breathe through all the layers of protection and let go of all the old script. Although the process of male sexual response is laden with nuanced sensations and arousal at every turn, many men approach orgasm the way a kid does at a gourmet dinner, rushing through dinner to a spectacular meal to get to dessert. Desire is not merely a light switch that turns on and off with the tug of genitals. For true desire to flourish, we need to create a sense of hungry anticipation and feed each other's sexual appetites, not just at night in the bedroom, but throughout our daily lives. Because sexual excitement is part of the neurology and brain chemistry of romantic love. For true desire to flourish, we need to work at it. The stimulation of dopamine is key to our interest in and pursuit of sex, as well as our thrill of enjoyment. And great sex isn't about doing something to him or her. It's about experiencing something with each other. And for most of us, the conventional ignorance of sex and relationships is really about greed, anger, and ignorance. And lastly, sexual energy is very powerful, the most powerful of all human energies. And when it is harnessed, directed, and disciplined, our spiritual energies can be fully experienced. The reason we are born is because of the accumulation of sexual energy, or Jing, and the reason we die is because of the disintegration of Jing. So next week we'll continue this. So by talking about we'll pull apart the stages of women's arousal, so that men understand. She's not. I mean, like I said, my nipples will right, but it doesn't last. It also doesn't last.
Yeah. Wow. So it left me thinking there were when you said about the death is when that concentration of energy goes away, and just thinking that some people let go of sexuality or sexual pleasure somehow, and kind of still stay alive. I guess there's some containment in them still. There's some desire somewhere, right?
But most of them are robots.
But then they're very robotic. But then how are they still alive? And I ask myself that.
Well,
How are robots still alive? That's so.
because the heart will beat without the Jing. I mean,
Right.
the Jing just makes it more pleasurable. Jing fills up this, makes you this vessel of sensuality that can experience the caress of a leaf as you're passing by to go, oh, or the feeling the wind on your neck and going, oh, that feels good. That's delicious, right?
Wow. So we've touched on this subject before, but very briefly. This is the actual big exposition about the sexuality, which is a crucial point in freedom, in health, sovereignty, and it touches everything, right? We can't think about economic sovereignty if we are sexually repressed. So,
Yeah.
so I want to invite people to connect all those dots and understand why we're talking about this. And if you want to go and connect the other dots, there's 134 videos and conversations where we talk about different subjects, and all of them are important dots to connect, and they bring about the image of freedom, of sovereignty, of human evolution, of what's the future for us? Are we stuck? Do we choose to continue to be stuck? Are we going to choose to still be robots, or do we want to be alive? Right. That's something that we have the power to choose that right now. We have like right now we can say, I want to be more alive. And I know some folks here are on that path, and this is feeding that that path for them. And we always have to talk to the people that are still not in the path, and because that's another thing, that we all need to come into the path. We all, it's not until everybody or enough people are into the path that we will see a shift, and that, and all this destruction and the cutting down of trees and the craziness and the psychoness is going to end, and the
Yeah,
elite is going to come down. It's all going to come down until enough of us choose to be on the path.
right. Until
So
enough
that's
of
what,
us choose to leave behind this MMMM,
right. So
right? Turn the
um
World Wide Web upside down. The
mhm,
mechanized, militant, monetized paradigm that we're living.
mhm,
We got to choose to stop living it. We've got to
right.
choose to walk away, like they're just going to say the peace queens of the Haudenosaunee
Mhm,
walked away from the mountain culture, said, I'm done. And that is particularly important with this Jupiter Uranus conjunction we just had. That's stimulating that in a lot of people.
okay.
I mean, it should stimulate it in everybody because that's what that conjunction is about. It's
Mhm,
time to walk away. That's Uranus. Time to walk away. Time to walk away. Time to walk
wow.
away.
And we are inviting folks to join us in that walking away. We're walking away. We're doing all that work,
Absolutely.
and you're free to come join us at any time. So next week we'll continue into more details of how to live
The
a
Tao of
more tantric,
natural love and sex.
a natural sexuality. I'm pretty sure that it's going to be very interesting for folks listening to this. And with all that, there's nothing more than to wish you waterfalls of blessings, everyone that's here, and to see you next week, same time, same place. So, anything else? Shall we close this?
Yep, we'll close it.
All right. So, see you next week.